Hi, I'm Tommy Moore, founder of the Bartitsu Lab, and this particular segment looks at why did Bartitsu die? Now you got to look at Bartitsu as a rather unique and exemplary experiment. It only lasted 2 and a bit years. It was a complete flash in the pan. But many of the principles of Bartitsu are things that we just hold as common sense today. So I want to go through some of the reasons why I think it folded and what we can learn from that and how we can avoid that happening in Bartitsu's future. So firstly, we understand that Bartitsu is an aggregated martial art. Now, Barton Wright took jiu-jitsu. He had tenuous claims to skills in other systems, tenuous claims to being, a decent fist fighter and beater of ruffians. So he's built his own mythos. He's got at least one solid martial art behind him, and he's made this club. And as part of this club, he's brought in different specialist instructors to build some degree of curricula for modern self-defense on the street. So he's brought in jiu-jitsukas, judokas, wrestlers, cane fighters, saboteurs, boxers, people of the time that you'd know would be able to handle themselves. Okay, so he's aggregated these arts, and Barton Wright is predominantly acting as the salesman of that art. So he's the face man, he's getting the magazine articles, he's fronting this system, and he's saying, I've pulled these people and these arts together to be fit for purpose for today's London. He's brought in those different principles. Often with these things, a founder, pioneer of a system will fall out with his instructors. And we've got to understand that Barton Wright is probably the least talented of all of his instructors. Barton Wright would probably get battered by each and every one of his senior instructors. So if you look at Tani, you look at Vinny, all these people could probably smear Barton Wright all over the pavement with their particular skill set. They're all hyper-specialised, hyper-talented martial artists of a distinct system in the main, okay? So Barton Wright obviously has to hold all of their egos together, and they all believe they're the best, and they've all got superior systems, and they're used to a show hall tradition where arts would go against each other for entertainment and for money. So that's a big part of the culture. My thing is better than your thing. Barton Wright has to hold all these egos together because he knows that by taking the best of Savat, by taking the best of wrestling, by taking the best of boxing, by taking the best of jiu-jitsu, he can make a quality, holistic syllabus that is useful to people, okay? So his skills as a salesman and his skills of an aggregator are really, really important. So one of the things that killed Bartitsu really was Barton Wright being able to manage the conflicting egos, the conflicting opinions, and the conflicting desire for fame that his instructors would have had. I have no doubt that Barton Wright would have been a bastard of a salesman to work with. I think he would have been tight, stingy, disorganised, fame hungry, so I'm very well aware of those things. But I think what we can't ignore in the death of Bartitsu is Barton Wright's big picture thinking. He was thinking bigger, in my opinion, than each of his constituent instructors, because Barton Wright was thinking, I need to take the best of each of those essences to make something useful for people of the time, to make a self-defense art which is truly integrated and useful. So whilst he was the least talented in each of the distinct areas, I would say he was the most talented at big picture self-defense and martial arts. His notion was to bring these things together. Other people were doing it at the time, so we got the Defense Dance LaRue tradition and other people around the world. But if we're talking Bartitsu, Barton Wright, whilst the least talented, was probably the most visionary and probably most strategic in thinking about his art. Now the problem with that is that until very, very recently, niche, just self-defense arts typically have short lifespans. It's only in recent history that we've got very popular self-defense systems like Krav Maga. Normally people saw self-defense as an addendum to something else. I'm going to do self-defense stuff in my karate. I'm going to learn some self-defense by virtue of learning boxing. Self-defense was always an adjunct too in many ways. You don't need to learn many techniques to be good at self-defense. If you've got a decent right cross, a decent leg reaping throw, a decent strangle and a decent fence, you'll survive and thrive in most situations. Teaching a self-defense syllabus is all about a small cadre of techniques that you know really well, can apply under pressure, and that do the business to keep you safe. That is very modern thinking for the time, and not in tune. People weren't really looking at self-defense content for some time. It was only really Krav Maga where the interest in regular self-defense content really spiked, really took off. And again, Krav Maga does it really well because they still keep it varied. You're still picking up things from different arts. We'll do a knife week, a gun week, we'll do multiples, we'll do this, we'll do that. They've made a good and interesting syllabus. But in reality, for most core self-defense, all you need to know could be wrapped up in fewer than 10 techniques and some insights and strategy. So I think Bartitsu died as well because the world wasn't ready for an integrated self-defense system. And I think that it's only today we appreciate the long-term value of consistent and consolidated self-defense training. So I think he was way ahead of his time in thinking of that. So another area really that made Bartitsu die, I think, was essentially the kind of wave of Orientalism at the time. Jiu-jitsu is new and it's sexy and it's cool, and we're only just as a culture finding out about Japan. And Japan, they're a growing nation. They're turning from a feudal nation into a growing, everything about Japan and Asia has suddenly become interesting and mysterious and unique and exotic. We've got these arts which are pretty boring and vanilla to us now. We've got boxing and savate and using the cane, and we've seen that since the 1700s. We haven't as a culture seen jiu-jitsu. So the newness of jiu-jitsu, the Orientalism at the time, people finding that exotic and interesting. You wear a funny uniform, you speak in a funny different language. All of these things are really attractive psychologically to people. So you can see the big boom in judo and jiu-jitsu for the sheer exotic nature of it. It's really exciting to explore a new culture and to do something different. The people of London were taking a breath of fresh air when it comes to martial arts, seeing something different. They might have seen that strangling catch wrestling and thought it was boring. Now it's done by a man in pajamas, calling it Hadaka-jime. Now we're like, this is cool, we like this. So again, the exoticism, the newness, the novelty of the Asian arts really took hold in people's minds because that was on trend in everything. In furniture, in music, in shows. The idea of the Orient being an exciting, exotic place was really prominent and salient in people's minds. So really, why did Bartitsu die? Audiences weren't ready for an integrated, holistic self-defense system. People weren't ready for that. Barton Wright charged a bloody fortune for his services because he was looking to milk a certain demographic, and he tried that. He succeeded and then he failed, but he gave it a shot. So his own entrepreneurship and vision, not really including the middle classes, but having a very niche and bespoke demographic, that paid off early and then cost him dearly at the end. You've got the egos of the varying instructors and them not buying into Bartitsu's vision. They were happily taught at the Bartitsu Academy. Did they buy into the notion of Bartitsu as an integrated system? I don't know. I don't know if they were there just to be paid, but personally I don't feel like they shared the same vision as Barton Wright. Okay? So you've got all of those different factors. What will kill Bartitsu today? So I'm so glad it revived, and I'm so happy that people started a movement to bring it back to life. I think that's so fantastic. I did an interview with James Marwood. It's one of the first people to kind of start to bring that back to life. It's so fascinating to see things go from a niche, weird Hema Yahoo group into a thing done all around the world. As I speak right now, there'll be clubs all around the world teaching Bartitsu. It's amazing, okay? What do I think will stop it? I think the important thing is Bartitsu should always remain an open source martial art. I think to try and regulate and impose it, Bartitsu was so long dead by the time that people revived it. You can't possibly purport any degree of orthodoxy. My way is the right way. Most people's Bartitsu looks very different to mine, and I think that's really cool. I think it's amazing that we can work with instructors that all have their own different takes and bring something different to the Bartitsu table. So I think keeping it nice and open, nice and broad, nice and evolutionary. And I think as long as Bartitsu instructors all around the world continue to collaborate, because you don't want to build little cults in one area, I think as long as we start to collaborate and work together and go to seminars together and our students work with each other, I think if that continues to happen like it does today, that's an amazing thing. So keeping Bartitsu open source and flexible is really, really key. And then I also think media is really, really key. Speaking to other Bartitsu instructors, when things like Sherlock Holmes came out, everybody, I say everybody, a small proportion of everybody, suddenly had a massive spike in interest in Bartitsu, or the Wing Chun-y version of Bartitsu you see in the films. We need to be ready as Bartitsu instructors for what will be the next time we are likely on trend, and how do we capitalise on that, and how do we tap into people's desire for it? You know, if you think about films like Kingsman, if you think about things that might use a Bartitsu edge to it, you know, making sure that at those times we reach out to people that have an interest and make sure that we are migratory as well. I'm from a combat sports background and also an Eastern martial arts background. So I like to try and bring people that I know from boxing, I like to bring people that I know from karate or judo, follow them through into Bartitsu. Also know a lot of people in the Hema community, longsword people, rapier people, getting them to think a little bit more Bartitsu too. So I think making sure that we don't just stay within a Hema field or a self-defense field, but that we're essentially the crossroads between Hema and normal martial arts. And if we can bring in both parties to that and help them see value in it, I think that's really key to the sustained and future success of the art. I see a really positive future for Bartitsu. I think there's great stuff being done by instructors all around the world. So hopefully it doesn't die again. But I think, you know, on behalf of Bartitsu Lab, I am so thankful for the people that got the ball rolling. And I think as long as we keep working together, talking together and experimenting, then Bartitsu will have a fantastic future to come.